Hello and welcome to today's virtual mentor panel event, highlighting the amazing mentors on our FRC Team 612. I'm one of your hosts, Aiden Levy.
And I'm one of the other hosts, Dhananj Putt. Before we dive in, I'm going to explain how today's event will work. So I just want to take a moment to thank all of 612's mentors for all the work that they've done for the team and for the countless hours that they've spent making sure that our team can be successful. We would also like to thank them for sacrificing their time and being here with us today as they share everything they've learned.
We would also like to give a special thanks to 612 leadership for helping us plan this wonderful opportunity. And with that, let's give a virtual round of applause to our mentors and leadership via the chat and via Zoom reaction.
First, we will have all the mentors introduce themselves. So they have like a short, brief autobiography about their post-high school education and careers. And then we'll have the mentors open, they'll be open to questions from you guys.
So please keep yourselves muted and ask your questions to the mentors via the chat. And once the opportunity arises, we'll relay those questions to the mentors. So let's get started with our first topic, which is mentors. Can you please give a short introduction of yourself and what your role is on 612?
All right, so I'll get started. I'm Ron Baer. I'm the lead mentor for 612. I've got a degree in electrical engineering, but my career is mostly computer science, software engineering, and I'm currently a program manager and network analyst over at Zeta Associates. For roles on the team, I mentor in leadership, robotic design, electrical and pneumatics, and on programming. And along with Mr. Schneider, we will be the teacher sponsors for this year.
And I'll then follow up. My name's Dave Schneider. I am the other lead mentor behind Mr. Baer there. I primarily focus on mechanical robot design and mentoring the leadership team, and also being the loud voice to settle down the room. My degree's in industrial management. I also have a degree in journalism. And I own my own company, which I've operated now for 13 years. And I build and design logistics systems, supply chains, and have built some very large automated facilities, some of them getting up to the 1 million+ square foot size.
My name is Mike Muto. I've been helping out as a mentor with 612 the last couple of years, since 2018-19. Mainly I've interfaced with the electrical and the programming teams. Partly that's because where the sensors live and that kind of in between there. My day job is with the Aerospace Corporation, where I'm currently the director of the Advanced Sensor Engineering Department. We deal with a lot of remote sensing applications, prototyping and designing. Degrees are in physics. So but nowadays work is kind of a generalist applied physicist engineer.
I don't really know how to follow up after that. My name's Alex. I've been a 612 mentor for only a little bit over a year now. I am currently a senior at George Mason University pursuing a bachelor's in bioengineering and a minor in mechanical engineering. I've been doing FIRST since about 2015 with my team over in Manassas, where I graduated from, over at Osborne High School. So yeah.
Hi, I'd like to follow up. My name is Brian Lee. If you guys have not met me, I'm a 21-year-old college student that's attending Northern Community College. And my role on this team is to mentor and assist projects that take place on the mechanical sub-team. Hooray.
Yep, so our next question is, beyond high school, what forms of education did you pursue? And what are some helpful things to keep in mind when applying for colleges?
Dave, you want to kick off first?
Sure, I'll kick off first. So my dream when I was in high school was to be a Pulitzer Prize winning photojournalist, and I pursued that through college, and then worked at daily newspapers for about a year until I realized that I would starve because they didn't pay, and being being a young, very good photojournalist, I was dangerous to other people in the newsroom. And so I would get the crappiest assignments and got tired of that. Went back to college and got a degree in industrial management. And the reason why I did that was I landed in a chair factory, a furniture factory that made money in spite of itself, and said, I just saw all the waste going on in the place and said, I need to go to school where I can learn more about how to fix this. And that's what led me to industrial management. And something to keep in mind when you're applying for college is that you go to college with a certain dream, a certain career aspiration, and often what you end up walking out of school with is a degree that you never knew that you were going to get when you walked in. And was my journey over 7.5 years of education. Who's next?
Mike?
Sure. So my degrees are in physics. I have a bachelor's and a master's. First question is why would I pick that? And the answer is I couldn't come up with a better idea. I knew I wanted a technical major, but I had a number of people in my family who were engineers who would just kind of look at me funny and go, no, you're not, an engineering program's not for you. It's personality-wise not a good fit. Ended up starting in physics and just never changed, never found anything that was better or more fun, because I did have a lot of fun with that. But then after that, I thought about this question and it didn't stop there. The after high school education to me really continues all the way through my career. I'm always taking short courses, always finding new things that I need to learn about, I want to learn about, or I'm just doing, stuff on my own. This is all whether it's, focal planes and sensors where I ended up and I just kind of had to figure it out as I go, or systems engineering as I progressed through my career. Electronics, electrical engineering, I had to teach myself because they don't really teach you that in physics. They just kind of teach you the theory and go build it and talk to your EE friends. And you learn how to do things. And so, yeah, there's the college side of this, but then there's the life side of that question. And I think that's one thing that I've learned to be successful with all this and to have a good career. You need to keep that open mind going forward. As far as helpful things to think about when you're applying for college, I want to echo what Mr. Schneider said there. Leave options for yourself. When you're in high school, and that's a long 4 years or 5 years from entering college to leaving, and you're going to get into the details of classes, and you might find that you enjoy something that's totally different than what you thought, even within especially within a technical field, or other things. So I had a lot of friends that changed from one type of engineering to another, or in and out of sciences, and it's just because finding their passion, what they really enjoyed. So I would, picking a college and applying for things, that's one thing I would say, is make sure that you have options when you're there, that there's a lot of things going on, because that also builds a lot of really good cross-field collaborations. You don't want to just put yourself off in a niche. The other thing is find a place that's good for you, has the things that you're interested in, and is a good challenging level, but at a place where you can be successful. I without knowing that, I ended up at a place that was good for me, but if I would have gone to a tougher school, I may not have been ready for that at the time, but I was successful where I was, and so that allowed me to progress beyond there. You don't have to go to the biggest, fanciest school to begin with. It's where you end up, not where you start. Next.
Alex?
I guess I'll go. I'm obviously still in college, so I'm still kind of trying to figure out some stuff. Like many of you in high school, I know Chantilly's, above the rest in, their program. A lot of really smart kids go to Chantilly. When I was in high school, I was out at the governor's school in Manassas, which is like Manassas's version of TJ. So I was there with a lot of very competitive students, and it was very hard to try and make myself stand out in that crowd. One of the reasons I ended up at George Mason instead of, like, my very first pick when I was applying college was Princeton. Princeton University was my dream school. Sadly, got deferred then denied from Princeton. So then my second school was UVA Engineering, and I got in there. I was all planning on going to UVA. When out of the blue, George Mason, who the only reason I applied to George Mason, frankly, was because they waived my application fee. I applied there, and they came back with a scholarship offer. And I didn't expect it, but because so few of my colleagues applied to George Mason, I was able to get a scholarship offer, and that's the primary reason I'm here. There's a great story I tell Mr. P's class when I come in there to talk about applying to college. I had a friend who was very similar to me, took all the same classes. We got basically the same grades and everything. He ended up applying to the mechanical engineering program at Georgia Tech. Very good program. Georgia Tech is very high tier engineering. I didn't apply there just because, frankly, I don't know. I've never been to Georgia. I don't have any friends that went to Georgia Tech, didn't know much about it. Just didn't really cross my mind. He ended up getting a full ride, every dime paid for by Georgia Tech at their engineering program. And I was floored. I was like, I tell Mr. P and I tell all these students, if I applied to Georgia Tech and got that same scholarship, you dang well bet I would be at Georgia Tech right now. I would not be a George Mason student. I would be a Georgia Tech student. So that's my encouragement to all the rising seniors and everyone else. Apply to as many places as possible, because you never know what type of opportunities you have.
Brian.
Yes. Well, as you can see, I'm still a pretty young student. This would be my second year of community college. The forms of education, they're still under plans. They're still underway. I'm still deciding that to transfer to another 4-year university once I finish my classes at Nova would be my best bet. I haven't really decided where to go yet. Some of the things I could offer that I found very helpful when I was in high school were the accommodations. Considering many teachers, I did have struggles learning in high school, and they knew that if I went to college, such as a 4-year school, I'd have a lot of problems trying to manage myself in college because there's a lot of self-advocacy. And self-advocacy was one thing that I've struggled with a lot. Yeah.
I'll close it out here. So I've got a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering from the University of Akron. I specialized in control systems. I was a co-op student, so I also went to work started my junior year, worked for a semester, came home for a semester, worked for a semester. One of the best programs you could ever get into when you're actually in engineering. Now it's actually available for so many different disciplines, but originally was all engineering. I've done a 3-year internship over at the National Security Agency in cyber operations, both offensive and defensive cybersecurity. So both red teaming, hacking, and then how to do defense. And then, there's all kinds of other training and stuff you pick up along the way, and leadership and so on. But for college, and Brian, I think you hit a good point. College isn't for everybody right away. Taking a year or two, going over to Nova, figure out what you want to do. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a great path for a number of folks. And when you're looking around, do you fit in? Does this campus fit for me? Does this school fit for me? I remember taking my daughter around, and some of the places that fit right in, other places I just don't fit here. And it really, the personality, campuses have a personality, schools have a personality. Do you fit in with that? So find where you fit. You got to go visit these places and really find out, can I see myself being here? And as a few of you, the others pointed out, educational opportunities. You know, being able to change your major, and that's a big deal nowadays. So many people. My niece started off wanting to do, she was marine biology. She was going to start off marine biology, went into music, ended up with a degree in communications, and now is getting her PhD in social work. She found her passion, found out what really fit her, but had the ability over Rutgers to make those different changes and really find something that fit her well. Now, I hopped in engineering, stayed there, and it was what fit for me. But for so many folks, what fits for you? You know, so how can you change your majors? What's available out there? Engineering is not for everyone. College is not for everyone. Find out what fits for you, not what other people tell you that you need to do.
I want to add to that real quick. You know, my degree was industrial management. It wasn't an engineering course, though it had an awful lot of engineering in it. But it also had the management classes, and you know, almost 40 hours worth of management classes. And so it blended two different areas of skill set that allowed me to be able to manage the kind of projects that I manage today. If I'd gone on a straight engineering course that was offered, I would not have been exposed to the management background and the management classes. And so look for, you know, look at what's going to give you the greatest amount of options in a school to lever off of what Mr. Barrow said, because it gave me a foothold that really helped my career greatly. Being able not to be just an engineer, but also having the management training to go with it.
All right, we're going to move on to our next question. What were your career paths and what jobs have you performed? And what do you think is important to consider when discovering what type of job you want to pursue?
I guess it's my turn to start on that one.
Sure.
I had, when I look back, I kind of joke, but I'm very serious about this statement that I really did not plan my career very well. It just kind of happened. And you know, that started when I decided to go to grad school in physics. I thought I was going to go and work on big physics machines, big accelerators, and work on cancer treatment, all kinds of stuff. That didn't work out from the get-go. I ended up building microscopes. And I haven't done that since I got out of school. I ended up getting a job in California because reasons. I needed to go to California. And so I started working with focal points. Didn't know what they were when I took the job. And was a test engineer there, developing new test capabilities and on prototype parts, and kind of flowed that into leading design efforts and architecting new components and working across multidisciplinary groups and taking leadership roles. Why? Because I would get bored after 2 years, or actually about a year and a half of every task. I just kind of go, I'm bored, I want something new to do. And I start complaining to my boss that I need something new to do. One of the things that I noticed going along that I've always done is, for a long time I had a problem saying no. Someone would come in and say, hey, Mike, can you do something? And before they got done explaining it, I'd say yes. You know, being very eager to tackle those new problems before you understand. Now, I've learned better now that I've had about 25 years experience to ask a little bit more before I agree. But I would say, oh, yeah, but I ask first. But it's a, you know, I kind of negotiate, make sure I can succeed. But the idea of just that willingness to dive in, whether it's an education setting or a work setting, I think is a crucial thing there. So I've taken all that. I've ended up being, you know, like I said, a test engineer, technology lead engineer. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes here. Project manager, or project lead, project manager, lab manager, which was not a fun job because we had to develop new labs. That was all with one company. And then switched companies. I was a electro-optical systems engineer and project lead for a year. And then since I joined aerospace 13 years ago, I've been both a remote sensing subject matter expert, EOS and focal plane subject matter expert, a technology architect, where we're kind of charting out where the technology is going next and where the technology pushes are going to be for the customer, and principal engineer on or an investigator on a couple of things, including CubeSat projects. And now I'm a manager of a group where we have a bunch of engineers who are doing that same thing. And so it's going to personnel management and development of more junior members of staff so that they can fill those roles. So that kind of also goes to the be flexible in your education, be flexible in your career. So what's important when figuring out what you want to pursue? I think Mr. Bear used this word a second ago, and I wrote it down here. It's like, look for what your passion is. Bring passion to the job. These, if you're talking about a career in STEM, it's all challenging, no matter what the field is. It's going to be hard in class. It's going to be hard every day when you go to work. You need it to be something that you love doing, so that you put up with all the hard parts of the job and you're still happy at the end of the day. If you're just doing it because somebody says, oh, you're good at math and this is a great job, this is a good job for you. No, do it because there's something that speaks to you there. I had an intern, undergraduate intern for the last 2 years. Great kid, really great in our lab. We're very physics oriented. We work with camera chips. And we were sitting down doing his end of summer interview, and he finally admitted that what really excites him is chemistry. And it's like, great, go do that. Don't come back and work for me again. Go find what you love. And because his eyes just lit up when he talked about that. So as you go out there and you take the more advanced classes, you go to college, you get life experience. I think that's one of the things that you really, when you're figuring out what to pursue, what excites you, what do you wake up and want to do anyway, no matter if it's a job or not.
Yeah, I'm going to follow up after that. It is, take inventory of your passions. You want to be able to say, I love my job and they actually pay me for it. When you turn around and go, hey, this is so cool and I get paid,
Yeah.
then you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Ask yourself, what are you good at? Engineering is not for everyone. Math and science, if the math and science isn't your thing, why are you in engineering? The readout courses, really the courses that trip everybody up and they end up dropping out of engineering is math and science. It's not the engineering courses. They don't even get that far yet. And I was actually a teacher assistant for my senior year for the intro to engineering class. And I would talk to my professor on the way back to the engineering room and such about, the classes, the students, what are they even learning in this class? And that first class was all about learning to be an engineer and what the job really meant. It's not what they all thought. Oh, I'm going to connect wires to this and that. I'm going to wire this stuff up. No, that's what the technicians are going to do. How much hands-on work do I really get to do as an engineer and such versus I'm sitting here on a computer and doing designs and drawing stuff and other people get to build it. In some ways, yes, that's what it is. But you get to do some really cool stuff. And if the math and science isn't there, you've got other options. One of the best ones I came across was engineering technologies. So electronic technology, mechanical technology. It's a step down from engineering if you want to think of it that way, but it's basically doing all that other stuff that's minus the math and science. Well, the best way they had explained to me was, and as I looked into it, if you said, I need a stereo amplifier that's never been built before, go talk to your electrical engineer. If you want a stereo amplifier built of a basic design that has been done before, go turn to your electronic technician. He'll get it done in half the time than the engineer because the engineer is going to reinvent the wheel.
And it's going to work.
You don't go let the engineers go work on the assembly line. You send the tech guys in there because they're going to get it up and running. And yet it's still good work. It's solid hard work to do. There's a lot of cool things that you don't get into all the deep physics. Why am I learning physics and stuff in electrical engineering? Why do I care where the electrons actually flow and such? You got to understand how semiconductors and all these things actually work in order to take it to the next level. So think about where your passions actually are. I've gotten to do a lot of cool things. I started off actually one of my job interviews. I'll never forget it. I was actually got a call from TRW. It was a phone interview. And he goes, what do you want to do? So I want to build stuff. I want to do engineering work. I want to do electronics and such. He goes, what about programming? I go, I enjoy doing programming, but I don't want to do that as a career. And he goes, I was looking at your resume. I had a feeling you did a lot of software stuff, but this job's primarily software. He goes, yeah, probably not my thing. The job I ended up getting, I've done software for 30 years. I've never really done any real electrical engineering work. It's always been the software side and the embedded programming side of engineering. So I ended up doing exactly what I told the guy I didn't want to do, but I've loved every minute of it. I've done computer forensics. I've built specialized engineering computer systems where we wrote the software in that to go out and do specialized jobs. I've been a program manager where I actually had other people, where I managed what was being built, not the people, just what was being built, the contracts and everything else to go around it. I was also a people manager, not necessarily my favorite job. Because, well, they have problems, they have questions, and they have things you got to deal with. And I'm like,
Emotions and
care,
feelings.
but here's a quarter, call somebody who really wants to listen to it. I literally told my boss that. It's I can't do it. I hand him a quarter, so I'll pay for the call, but I can't sit and listen to this. Figure out what you want to do and what different jobs out there. But you can find so many cool opportunities when you're willing to sit and listen to what's possible out there. Try not to say yes to everything though.
Well, I'll pick it up from here then. Here's the, I really didn't figure out what, and really start having a ball with what I was doing until I was about 45. I kind of knew the path, but if anybody had told me back when I was 22 that I would end up having my own consulting practice and doing some of the cool stuff that I do today, I wouldn't have believed it. Absolutely would not have believed it. When I went back to college, I pursued that journalism degree, and that ended up being, an eye-opener once I got into the world and said, this sucks. I don't want to do this. And when I went to go get my industrial management degree, my intention, and I had a job interview all lined up to go interview as a line supervisor with Mallory Battery, which became Duracell. And but that last year that I was in college at Southwest, instead of doing thesis papers for 4 of my technical classes, what I did was we could do projects. And what I did was designed, built a 3-axis robotic arm out of scratch. I could use component parts, but I couldn't use any real manufactured parts except for stepper motors. Those were the only manufactured parts I could use. And I had a ball doing that. But what led me into my career is at the same time I was working full time at a building materials retail store, big lumber yard. And the store assistant manager was convinced I would be successful in management at that company. And he kept talking to me about going into management, in retail management. And I had no desire to do that at all. Absolutely none. I did not like customers. Even though I was good with them, I didn't like them. They're people, and some people I just don't like. But he was convinced, and what he ended up doing was he got me a phone interview with the vice president of distribution for that company. And in talking to that guy, he decided off of the phone interview that he needed to have other people talk to me. A month later, I was a warehouse supervisor at a distribution center in Phoenix, Arizona. A year and a half after that, I was promoted to a project engineer within the corporate office of that company. A year after that, promoted again to being a project administrator. I led teams of people that we did strategic planning exercises. We did productivity projects. One of the big projects that I led was, this was when UPC barcodes were just getting started and used in retail. My small team, we put together the system to prove the concept. And within a year, the company had gone UPC across 200 stores. It was those kinds of journeys along the way where I wasn't thinking about where's this taking me. It's just, this is going to be fun to work on. I went to work for an engineering firm after that designed and built distribution facilities. But most of my work is working with the clients to figure out how big they needed to be and where they needed to be, and challenge some of their logistics problems, which then grew into understanding trucking networks and where labor comes from. And then that grew, and when I went to work for Pep Boys, I built 7 distribution centers when I was at Pep Boys. I also was became responsible for the transportation network. And when I took over the transportation network, I knew some things about transportation, but I walked in like an industrial engineer and looked at it and said, well, this is a mess. This is crazy. Let's get this straightened out. We have so much waste. Let's clean up all the waste. When I took that position, we spent $170 million a year in transportation. When I left 7 years later, we only spent $70 million in transportation. And we doubled the amount of freight that we carried. Nothing to do with engineering at all, but it was all figuring out all of the multiple pieces of the logistics network. And then now in my own, running my own business, that was a whole different challenge, because now I had to go sell. I had to figure out the marketing. I had to advertise. I had to now listen to people's problems and figure out whether it was their problem or a systemic problem. And the sales, not only was the sale to get the work in the first place, but every step of the way, there's a selling process that you go through to influence and convince people to do something different. And that's a huge challenge. It's one that I wake up every day going, what am I going to do next? What change am I going to make happen next? And that's the passion that I have for it, is that. And so my career path, totally unplanned, but I'm doing what I love to do. And that's the important part.
I'll follow this up just very briefly, because I obviously haven't started my career path, so I can't contribute terribly much to this discussion. I will just say that, it's all about exploring. College is a great place to do that. One of the things I've learned here at Mason is when I graduated high school, I wanted to do research. My passion was actually sciences. I wasn't passionate about engineering as much as it was about just researching in a lab. After getting into Mason and switching my major 4 times, I realized that research sucks and I do not like it. I do not like working in a lab for 6 hours a day. What I found fascinating was the little machines that I would use. We had this great machine that we'd use in our biotechnology lab that would heat up a sample for a certain amount of time and then change those heating patterns in order to grow different cultures of bacteria. I was like, that's awesome. I need to learn how that works, which is now why I'm a bioengineer and learning how to actually construct machines like that. So, college is a great place to explore those things.
Just like Alex, I don't really have much to offer either, but what I can say for sure is what is more important for people considering what type of job that they want to pursue. I haven't really experienced the job market yet, but regardless of what I choose, I think the most important things to consider is if you love the job. Because if you love the job and you know the environment is for you, it means you're willing to stick to it. I mean, pay can sometimes be important, but it can also affect the type of environment the job takes place. And I really do think that you guys shouldn't forget that when you're pursuing that job that I'm reading this off my my paper, so it's a bit awkward. however, you shouldn't forget that the job that you chose to pursue is sorry.
It's okay, Brian. You'll get
All
through
right.
it.
Of course, but this is how I view careers in general based off other people. It's just it's the same thing with my cashier job. I went to a cashier job because I used to work in a electronics recycling plant down in Falls Church. And the reason I chose that first job was for the technical part. I really like to see what was inside electronics. I really wanted to see what's inside maybe like printers. But after a while, the position I stuck to was a lot of labor work. It was very labor intensive. And after a while, I decided I'd look for another job. And so I just told my boss that, I just don't feel like working here anymore because it's just not who I am, working a lot. And so I decided to stick to a job where it was less labor intensive. Even though I'm a big guy, I'm not really strong. I can't move stuff around like huge printers or robotic arms. I can't do that. I've had a lot of bad experiences, so I decided to go with a cashier job. And funny enough, while the job itself is a bit boring, I was really comfortable with it, mainly because I got to handle the cash all the time. It's a bit irrelevant to the career path I'm going for. So just stick with what you love.
I've got a quick question for Mr. Bear and Mr. Muto with this, and that is that are there things that you didn't think were going to be applicable to what you did, to what you do today that you use today? My journalism skills, being able to ask the right questions, I use those all the time. And I never thought that, when I went to industrial management, I never thought that I would use them. So are there examples that you guys can think of that, hey, I still use those skills every day?
The toughest, so the one part is, well, even when I was going to school. So here I am as a sophomore in electrical engineering, and turning over to the seniors and saying, "Hey, how do we do these problems? I'm trying to figure this stuff out." He goes, looks at us, "Oh, yeah, we don't do it like that anymore. I don't even remember how to do it that way," because that was the first step to then learn the more advanced techniques. And then once you learn the advanced techniques, you don't go back to the first ones. So it was along the lines of you're learning how to learn, so learn what you're really going to do. And in fact, that's kind of what we kind of figured out when we finished up through college. And Alex, I don't know if you kind of come across the same thing, it's like, why am I learning this technology and stuff that's 10, 20, 30, 50 years old when they don't use that stuff anymore? Because that's the stepping stones to understand what you're doing the next piece, to what you're doing today, to then how to learn what you're going to use tomorrow, which hasn't even been invented yet. So you're truly learning more how to learn and how to adapt to and understand the technologies of where things are going than you are actually learning your real job. Because once you get to the job, you'll actually figure out what you need to get when you get there. Alex, you want to hit on any more of that part? Because I think you're probably going right through that.
A little bit. You mentioned something earlier where I think everyone's mentioned this, where what you do in college is not necessarily what you end up doing in your life. One of the things I've started discovering in college is I don't even want to do engineering. I don't even want to do STEM. Well, I figured out what my main passion was is entrepreneurship and building my own things from the ground up. Learned that the hard way. My very first startup when I was a freshman in college crashed into the ground. I now run, one of the things you guys might hear me talk about a lot is I run the George Mason Solar Car team, which is my startup, even though it's a nonprofit. nothing in my classes are really teaching me about this, especially because I am a bioengineer still. But I almost want to give bad advice and say, yeah, I'm learning more from, you know, my clubs than I am from college itself. So when I can't figure out a way to word this. I'm learning so much from, you know, the environment around me from necessarily in my classes. You do learn a ton from your classes, especially if you know what type of job you want to go into. But I learned so much more from robotics teams and from extracurricular activities like solar car, from running my own projects. So, you know,
Alex, I think part of the piece on that is there's the book work, and then there's the applying it and making it real.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of where you're hitting on. You know,
Yeah,
the stuff you learn as a professor, but then what do I do with it?
Yeah, because you'll take some of these classes and you'll be like, this class is awesome. Like I'm currently taking a digital electronics course and I'm like, this stuff is really interesting because I want to learn about this. There's other classes you'll take that are just requirements, like my biomedical imaging class I had to take last semester. I would just spend an hour and a half slamming my head into a desk because I was sitting there. I'm like, why am I taking this course? I would never use it. But down the line, great example. I had to take systems and signals engineering my third semester at Mason, learning about Fourier transforms and closed and open loop systems. Hated the class. I could not pay attention. Now I'm reading textbooks about that stuff because I realize how it applies to things like FRC and how I'm like, oh my God, this is where PID loops come from. This is so interesting. So it's a lot about, you know, taking some of what you learn in class, but really going and forming it into your own club or internship or job or whatever you want to do.
Let me give everybody another secret about college. You know, if you go to a college that's broad enough, there's a lot of different studies that are happening. You got psychology, you've got English, you got history, you've got physics, you've got biology, you got all of these different areas of study. When I went back to college, my degree was in industrial management. There was one psychology class that was a core requirement for anybody that you had to take. And I had taken psychology when I'd gone through my first trip through college. And so I wasn't going to take psychology again. But then I said, wait a second, I'm going to have to deal with people. And there's times that I'm not really good with dealing with people. And so maybe, you know, taking some additional psychology classes are going to help me. I'll tell you this right now. What I learned in those psychology classes, I use every day in thinking about how I'm going to deal with my clients and with the people that I work with. I took group and organizational psychology, and I also took deviant psychology. And you'd think about it and go, why would you take deviant psychology? Well, a lot of the problems within organizations are because people are acting out. They have some sort of deviant behavior. And now I have the tool sets to be able to recognize it and be able to deal with it that I would not have had if I didn't take that course. So while you're going to college, don't just narrow in on just the core that they make you take. Expand your horizon. Be willing to spend mom and dad's money a little bit more perhaps, or work through school like I did to have the ability to, you know what, I'm going to take an extra semester. I'm going to take a few extra classes that are going to their areas of interest that they may help me in my career. And I've got an interest in them. You have the opportunity when you go to college to be able to do that. And I encourage people to do that. Don't go crazy with it, but take a few extra classes that are outside your core major and explore, because you will use that when you get in your career.
I think we can move on to our next question. Our next question is like pretty simple and easy to answer. It's just when and how did you become involved with 612 as a mentor?
Let's start from youngest to oldest, or oldest to youngest?
If it's time
Ryan,
we
why
work
don't you kick
backwards.
it off, Ryan?
Oh, okay.
You're our youngest mentor.
So yeah, I'm pretty young, despite the fact I'm 21 years old.
Well, no, but what I mean by oldest to youngest is you've only been a mentor now for 1 year.
Okay, yeah, I'm a youngling, so.
So how'd you start, Brian?
So I started by being a member of Chantilly Robotics. It started last year, but as I said, it started with me being a student in high school and finding that my passion was actually participating in robotics. Um, in the first place, the reason I chose robotics as the place that I wanted to go to as a hobby was because the first high school that I went to didn't offer it, and there's not many clubs that was interested. I mean, I did play in basketball, but after a while, basketball was kind of I couldn't fit in with all the other people because they're way more athletic than me. They were way more skinnier. I couldn't do anything in basketball, so I just decided, I look for another hobby. I went into Vex Robotics for about a year, and then I decided that I didn't want to work with it was a very confusing year. The reason I say confusing because at the same time the coach of the team made me feel like a member and a mentor, which didn't seem to really fit well with me. So I decided, I wanted to explore if there are other clubs in high school. And then when I transferred from my first high school to Chantilly, I learned about robotics because there was a teacher that used to sponsor our team. Her name is Miss Walker, Kathy Walker. And that's when I just started getting involved in robotics. Maybe the first year, if I remember, it wasn't, I can remember a lot of bad things. I mean, they happened. So, and probably my second year. My third year was a bit different. I started to change a lot. And after a while, I decided, these competitions are going to go on for, I don't know, maybe forever. So I decided my passion was with robotics because that was the only closest place that I could get to exploring those new things that I just couldn't start out at home. I mean, I couldn't just go to some school for that, right? So I decided, that robotics was the only place at school that I knew where robotics was true.
Yeah. So this is your first year. Yeah, go on.
Yeah. So, and even to this day, it's still a passion for me. Yeah. I still think about it. If I have time.
Yeah.
Because college.
So that's cool.
Brian's in here for 1 year. Mike, this is your second year, right?
Yeah. Last year I was involved a little bit the year before, but not a whole lot. Really started because my son Fred was involved. Actually, my wife had been the faculty sponsor a couple of years before that. So, honestly, she was twisting my arm a little bit. But then, I had been coaching soccer before that and stepped away from that at that time. So that freed up some time. And logistically, just with her changing schools, that freed up a lot of things. And I was able to become more involved last year, or I guess whenever that was. I kind of lost track of time at this point. So I've been enjoying it since then. So.
Yeah. And Alex, you've got 3 years now mentoring, right?
It just hit me that I've been working with 612 for just over 2 years now.
And you've been mentoring over at Manassas for 3 years?
Yeah, 3.5, and I've been on FRC for 6 years ish now. Part-time as a student, obviously. So it's actually a really funny story how I got affiliated with 612. It was completely by accident. I was working with 1895, which is the team I graduated from. Went to George Mason, came back and mentored for 1895 for my first year. And that's when FRC really started to I got a bug for it. I was like, I need to spend more time doing this, and 1895 just wasn't supplying it enough. So I was like, I need to work with a second team. And I was going to work with 1123, AIM Robotics, who's only a mile away from George Mason. I also had a few other teams on my list. I had 1418 on my list. I had 614 on my list. At the very bottom of my list, I had 612 because I knew you all were in the area, but I also remembered what you did to 1895 and 1815.
You won't let it go.
I won't let it go. And 1123 never responded to my email. I was going to reach out to 1418 when I met Mr. Rothwell. He's a teacher over here at George Mason, and I was his TA. And he noticed my first hat one day, and he's like, hey, you do first. And I was like, yeah. And he was like, I work with 612. And I was like, awesome. Can you introduce me to them? The rest is kind of history. I started as the marketing, one of the marketing mentors. Now I kind of do other stuff, like mostly CAD, some mechanical stuff if I could help with it. But yeah, it's kind of interesting how I fell into it. And now I spend a lot more time on 612 than I do over at 1895, which 1895 is not terribly happy about. But
Dave?
Well, I got dragged in because Christine, on her freshman year, had signed up for this thing called the Robotics Club. And my wife had told me that, hey, I can't go to this parents' meeting. Can you go to the parents' meeting? And so I went to the parents' meeting. And it was right before build season. So it was like a December meeting. And I was listening to what was going on. And they had made a comment where, we really need some help with some mentors, especially on mechanical. And I've got mechanical aptitude. Heck, I design and build big automated facilities. So that's how I got involved. And that first year that I was involved, most of the kids kind of shoved me to the side. It was like, who's this guy? They have no clue. But there were several of them that, they got a couple of kids that I worked with, and I had a lot of fun with them. And I just got bit by the bug. I mean, by the end of the year, had completely drunk the Kool-Aid. It was the second year that I took the bath in the Kool-Aid, but that's how I got into it. And Keith just posted up there. Christine had joined robotics to get away from her family, and guess what? We all showed up. But still, it was to me, it's returning back to one of the roots that I had. What did I do to get out of college? My senior year of college, I designed and built a robot and wrote the code for it and everything else. This is exciting stuff. And I guess the biggest reason why I want to come back and stick to it is because I get so much psychic compensation out of the effort. It's great to watch the kids develop and grow. Watch him mature. I look at Brian between when I met him 4.5, 5 years ago and now, and how he's developed. I think of some of the other students who I've maintained contact with when I see them. Even some of those that shunned me that first year, we're still, we see each other when they're home from school. We see each other and talk. And I would never have expected that. And so that's how I got involved, and why I continue to stay involved is there's just so much joy that I have watching the kids develop and having a hand in that.
Yeah, I got pulled in. Megan was a sophomore when she joined the team. And so come the fall, what is this robotics thing? Do they need any help? Come on, start checking things out. And that was in 2011. So fall of 2011. So this will be my 9th year. Megan graduated 6 years ago. Oh, yeah. And my wife is still asking, why are you doing this robotics thing? Your daughter graduated forever ago. In fact, even the ones that weren't in high school yet have graduated from her. But it's just been a blast working with the students, just stuff that we do. My biggest challenge as being a mentor is not saying, go sit in the corner, Mr. Bear wants to play with the robot. You guys get to do all the fun. I mean, it's hard to not want to say, hey, yeah, I want to build this. I want to work on the robot now. But it's been an absolute blast. And that's why I got into it, was, again, through my daughter.
All right, we're going to move on to our next question then, which is, what type of skills do you think it's important for anyone to have going into STEM, and how do you think FRC is applicable in the job force?
Right off the bat, what you learn in engineering is going to help you. So many companies are looking for those with STEM skills. With FIRST has gotten such a great name that companies know what it is and know what it means. So that'll carry a long way. But really, it's curiosity, discovery. It's a lot of hard work. So STEM, it's a great field, but it's not for everyone either. The thing I always look at, science and math, those are the bookends. If you don't have that, STEM is going to be really hard for you, or maybe not the right thing for you. Because the technology and engineering, that's just comes off of it. The bookends is science and math. And if that's not your passion, maybe you ought to be looking for how else do you be involved in the STEM fields, whether it be through business aspects, for marketing, there's so many different ways, whether you're in biomedical engineering and so on. Maybe you're not making the devices that make the temperature change, but you're looking at the organisms that actually are being impacted by that on the biology piece of it and such. But that's really, you have to have the passion for it. Now, the next piece of it, though, where do you keep going? Because you're going to get so far, you're going to end up getting out of college. You'll made a bunch of friends with all the other geeks and other engineers or STEM folks that you're surrounded with. And you're going to feel, this is what the world looks like. It looks just like me and everybody I went to school with, because you isolated yourself around everybody you went to school with. And you ended up being in the same classes all the way through. I graduated with 60. And we basically were in the same classes for the last 3+ years. In fact, I'll never forget, my freshman year had a 1-hour class. And the professor comes in and goes, electrical engineering, this is what it's all about. He goes, look to your left and look to your right. They will not be there when you graduate. Basically, he said, 1/3 of you will graduate in electrical engineering on time. There was 180 in that class. I graduated about 65, 5 years later. Damn if he didn't nail it. And he's so old, he'd been around for a long time. He'd seen all of this. Because so many of them get into engineering not knowing why they want to do this. Is it really the right thing for them? But then the next piece of it, and I go through this for when I did working with people doing promotions and so on, is you get to a certain point where what you know, the smarts that you got, being able to actually produce gets you so far in your career. Then you got to get the other pieces. Do you play well with others? Do you have teamwork? Can you communicate well? Do you have leadership skills? Do you have people skills? Yes, you have to work with people. You can't just work with machines to truly get ahead in your career. You can end up being the guy in the computer room that talks to the computers, and he can go so far. But to truly say, why don't people listen to me? Why don't they take my ideas? People skills are also important, and learning those skills. Leadership and management, two totally different things. Leadership, vision, getting people to follow you, getting people to jump on board and run out the door with you. Management is organization. I do great in the leadership piece. I suck at organization. And having both those is what truly gets you further ahead. You will hit a roadblock. I've had so many younger engineers for where I worked at and such, that it's like they're not going any further until they clean up their act, until they learn how to work well with others. They can communicate. And we tell their management, you've got to talk to them. They're not going any further. And then they get more pissed. People don't listen to me. They keep in this endless cycle. You're gonna hit a roadblock there. So don't forget, you've got to have people skills to truly go forward.
Yeah, Let me jump in there because that's like I think you were copying off my list, Ron. Yeah, you got to have the technical skills. When I'm doing my job as a hiring manager, I figure if you got a resume that has a degree on there, you've already passed the technical part. Whether you've proven that you can learn in undergrad, you've proven you can learn on your own in grad school or whatever. But the things that I really look for and that I see successful engineers and scientists having, good communication skills. It doesn't matter what you do if you can't explain it to people, if you can't communicate your ideas and your results. Communication is key. Creativity and an open mind for problem solving. I actually get a little bit offended sometimes when people say, oh, you're an engineer. Well, I'm a creative. It's like, no, science and engineering is one of the most creative endeavors. You have to have an open mind. You're trying to learn things or create things that nobody else has done yet. So I'm not saying the other things aren't creative, but this is a creative field. And you have to have that inquisitive, open mind to look at everything you're doing and other people are doing to examine whether it's right or wrong, whether your stuff is, that you're working on, whether you're doing it right, and be objective about it. But the interpersonal skills and teamwork, we work in teams nowadays. Very few people get to go. We used to talk about, that you'd have an expert that doesn't work well with people. You put them under a rock, let them do their thing, and then occasionally trot them out and show them to the customer. They're happy because that's what they like doing. But that's not as successful as you can be with working in teams. And the final thing I put in there was something that it took me a while in my own career to realize is really important. And that's, you have to be able to switch quickly from the detail-oriented, in the weeds, problem solving, to looking at the forest, so to speak. So from the weeds to the forest, and then back out and say, from 30,000, 50,000 feet altitude, what is the lay of the land? Why am I doing this? And being able to quickly understand the problem up and down from there is something that is a really valuable skill that allows you to understand what problem you should be attacking.
Leadership's more than just being able to have people follow you. It's also the vision, and having the vision of being able to see beyond that next hill. Leadership is also being willing to ask the question, are we even in the right forest? Because often you'll have lots of people beavering away, and guess what? We're working on the entirely wrong problem. That's the problem that we're working on isn't going to solve what we need to do. The problem, the root cause of the problem rests somewhere else. The organizational skills, and Mr. Bear talks about that. He's strong in leadership, weak in organizational skills. All of those you can develop. Just because you're weak in organizational skills doesn't mean that you can't develop those skills. And so you have to be honest with yourself and your assessment. Have a pair of ears and the courage to ask some folks that have walked before you, what am I doing wrong? And having that humility to be able to ask, what am I doing wrong? And where am I screwing up? And how did I hurt this person's feelings? Or how do I improve my ability to communicate? Communication is core to what we do. Being organized with your work is core to what we do. Being able to organize and have the vision and understand what is the desired outcome that we want to achieve. That's core to what we do. And the further along you get in your career, the deeper you get in your career, the more you have to develop those skills. Because if you walk in just with that technical expertise, it gets you in the door, but it doesn't get you to the top floor. And maybe the top floor isn't where you want to be, but to have any growth in your career, you've got to develop those communications, those organizational management skills, and those leadership skills, or else you don't grow. And those are all areas that you can go to classes and they can teach you that, but you don't really learn them until you apply them. And those are the skills that beyond STEM that you've got to develop for any career, whether it's STEM or politics or history or accounting or business. It doesn't matter. Those apply to everything.
I'll just add on to that briefly because I think everyone else nailed it perfectly. You know, the technical skills that you learn in first are great. They're fun. They're cool. They're interesting. But learning how to run and grow not only yourself, but other people on the team around you is a skill that I have never seen a class or a course or a club or anything else teach like first. You know, that's what blew my mind about first when I was graduating college. The fact that I just watched a bunch of high schoolers build a 120-pound, 6-foot-tall robot in the matter of weeks, something that my colleagues at George Mason couldn't do if you give them a year in the senior design class. Watching high schoolers do that just absolutely floored me. I was like, this is incredible. And it ended up, you know, when I graduated, I was like, what's the next thing? And for me, that was, you know, my solar car team, running the George Mason, starting the George Mason solar car team from literally an idea to now the largest student-run engineering competition at Mason. Having that skill, if you are able to not only run a sub-team or FRC team, but grow that into something else, you could run any sort of student group, you could run a business at that point. I cannot think of a more valuable skill than that.
I don't have much to offer for this, but I do think that just to add on to everyone else's, for the people going into the STEM field, the things
I think everyone else summarized it too perfectly.
yeah,
It's hard to add on to everything the other minutes said.
it's pretty hard. They pretty much nailed it out of the water.
You're following a tough crowd.
Yes, I am. I'm very young. I'm very new. I really,
Hey.
I don't have the experience you guys have, but you definitely got it. I would have said that the two things that anybody going into the STEM field should have is a motivation to learn something new, and and creativity, which was talked about a lot. So
I'm going to add a little bit to that, Brian, and it's also the courage. And it's the courage to, you don't know much, you're still learning, and you're getting into the mix every day.
Yes, I am.
And so to be able to have the courage to go try something that you don't know, you're lacking the knowledge, direct knowledge to do it, but to have the courage to get in there and do it, that's cool.
But I'll follow up a bit on that. And a number of students have heard me say the same thing. You will learn more from your failures than you do from your successes. Having the courage to try things. And how many of you have heard me say you learn, knowledge enters through your forehead? As you're banging your head against the wall, talking about how stupid you just were, that how come I didn't figure this out the first time, are things you won't forget and things that help you grow and learn. So yeah, courage to try things, to get out there and be adventurous is how you will truly learn and give you life experiences that will carry you on.
It's more than a robot.
Yes, it is.
All right. You got some questions from the audience, I think.
Yep, so we can start with the audience questions. So if any of the audience has any questions, just type them in the chat. We also had a few questions earlier. So the first one would be, are PhDs overrated, and what is your opinion on PhDs?
Who wants to
Okay.
start out with that?
I will, because I got an answer here. So it really depends on what you want to do, excuse me, and who you are. They're not needed, But if you have a desire to get one and you have a drive to get one, there's a lot of value in accomplishing that. I do think that in a lot of the engineering fields now, a master's degree is a valuable thing because you go deep enough in a lot of the fields to get to the current stuff. PhD is a different beast. I had the group and the whole company I work with is predominantly got graduate degrees and PhDs. It's not having one is not a limitation, and in fact, it's a lot easier sometimes to hire somebody with a master's. And there's some people come straight out of school, go to work at a place, and then go back to graduate school because took them that long to figure out what they wanted to specialize in. And so I think there's a lot of variation there. And I think it varies by field too. I mean, if you want to go become a professor, yeah, you're going to need a PhD. Otherwise, I think there's a lot of flexibility there.
What do you want to do? Where do you want to go? I looked at getting my master's, and at the time my professor was asked, well, but why? What do you want to do with it? This was the mid 80s when engineers were getting hired. They couldn't turn them out fast enough. It's like, go get your bachelor's degree, and where do you go from there? So I'll go back and get my master's. I never did. And then at some point, depending on what you're doing in your career, what your degree in doesn't matter anymore. Like today, what my degree in doesn't matter anymore. Now it's your experiences and what you've done with yourself for the last 30 plus years, not what you did in 4 years of college. So for some folks, it's definitely important for what they want to do or where they want to go with it. I've got some friends who have their PhDs. One of them doesn't even want to be, we laugh at him, called Dr. Mario. And like, no, I don't want people to know I have a PhD because he says people look at me differently. But for what he wanted to do is important. So ask the questions, talk to your counselors, figure out where you want to go, and then figure out what your next degree is.
I'll just add on to that briefly, just because I'm currently applying to several PhD programs. Now that I'm a senior, I'm looking at some PhD programs, and the only reason I'm doing so is purely because my advisor recommended me to. I'm trying to find a graduate school that will give me a full ride, so I could spend the next 6 years of my life doing biotechnology research.
Yeah.
My advisor, what they told me is that if you apply to a PhD program, you're more likely to get a full ride than if I only applied to a master's program.
Yeah.
So,
So that's actually good advice. And as I go back, so my own history there is I was started out on the PhD track. And after about 2 years and not a great result on the qualifying exam, after 2 years, I said, master's will be fine for me. But, I still did a thesis and all that kind of stuff and got a huge amount of knowledge out of that process. And so for me, it wasn't necessary. But starting on that track, it's a lot easier, like kind of Alex was, I think his advisor was also alluding to, it's a lot easier to start on that track and back off if you find it's not for you. That said, you touched on something there too that I think being in STEM fields, it's really nice compared to a lot of other fields. And graduate school typically is paid for. You typically have an assistantship, you have funding, whether it's through, if you go straight out of school, you're working for an advisor, whether it's teaching or in research, or a lot of people, my company will send people to grad school part-time. And they work part-time. So there's a lot more options than if you were in a more liberal arts program where, you're shelling out bucks to go to grad school. The kind of remark we make a lot of times for physics and EE is if you got to pay for grad school, you probably shouldn't be there, So we're really fortunate. When we talk about STEM, we're kind of in that general realm of they all got research projects and they need help. So there's a fair trade there.
Mm-hmm. Next question.
All right, we'll move on to the next question then. The next question is, what exactly is the difference between an engineering degree, assuming that exists, and a degree in a specific type of engineering, like aerospace engineering?
Ooh.
Okay. So some schools, are you talking about a general engineering degree? Is that what the question is? Okay. So there's some schools that are not large enough to have specialty each individual field. I know there's one on the East Coast somewhere, and I'm missing it. Harvey Mudd on the West Coast, which is one of the Claremont colleges, also has that. Very good school, but they can only do a general engineering degree because they have, like, I don't know, 20 students. They have a few more, but I'm exaggerating there. And so it's a small department, so they're not all able to hit all the check boxes for a electrical engineering department or mechanical or an aerospace engineering. As you get to the larger universities, you'll end up, or larger programs, you'll have enough faculty and options in the education plan where they can specialize into those fields. And then, yeah, that's more typical. And then if you were going to, I would defer to somebody that actually went through an engineering program on this one. There is probably rules if you go to get a professional engineering license of what type of degree, or maybe it's just you pass the test. I don't know. I don't know the requirements. I've never had that as an option.
So
Yeah.
some of that, first of all, for folks who understand professional engineering, actually have a license, that means it's primarily for mechanical and civil, a lot on the civil side. And that just means you can sign off on things, that you can actually put the plans forward. It falls in a lot of legal realms, and that you're now certified.
Liability.
But yeah, in the electrical engineering field, unless you're going into power engineering, things like that, you don't necessarily go in the professional realm. And that's a big deal. But I've never worked with people who've been in that realm because that's just not the realm I was in. That's more in infrastructure, power systems, roads and all that kind of stuff, buildings, those kinds of things, where you get professional engineering. But general engineering is going to teach you the basic. Engineering is almost a culture. It's a mindset and a way of doing things.
Yep.
When I first started off, you get engineering paper, and they give you this grid paper that you write on one side of it. And you get that's how you turn in all your homework, you have your engineering paper and such. And then you get to the point where you only write on one side of the paper, because engineers don't write on the back side of paper, because that's not the way the paper's made. To the point that you don't even look on the back side. So even when I was a teacher assistant, I was rating papers. I was told if they don't do it, if they don't finish problems, it's graded as is. At some point, he said you don't have to grade the backs either, because they're not supposed to grade on the back. Well, I wrote one kid. I didn't see the rest of the problem. So, okay, I gave him a grade, flipped it over. Oh, it was on the back. Yeah, but I don't have to grade it now. But we don't write on the back side of paper. But the point is, it's a cultural piece to it, but it also gets you a way of thinking. Think about what Mr. Schneider said about transportation. He basically used engineering disciplines to figure out how to do transportation and solve the puzzle pieces. So you'll get that piece out of a general engineering degree. What you won't do is you won't dig deeper into whether it be mechanical or electrical, computer engineering, and so on. And then even then, you'll still get it overall. So like all the mechanical engineers had to take at least one class in mechanical engineering and electrical engineering. All the double E's had to take at least physics, dynamics and statics and some mechanical courses. We had to take drawing and things like that. So you're learning the other disciplines of engineering, but that wasn't your focus piece. And Dave, I don't know if you want to pick up on that.
Yeah, I am.
General engineer.
Because I went to a school that did not offer the specialties, not on the engineering. You had engineering, which was at the top of the heap at the School of Technology at Southwest Missouri State. I took the engineering, one side of the engineering curriculum that was the industrial management. So it was the management and engineering mixed in, more like an industrial engineering degree. Then they had just the straight engineering degree, but all the other degrees taught at that school, all the other degrees were technical degrees. And so those were the technicians that actually got to put hands on the equipment. And then there was a big group of us that were on the industrial management, engineering management side, and we had basic engineering degree, along with then layered in the management. And then you had folks that, had the straight 42-hour basic engineering degree. And so we had my degree was 60 hours to graduate within the degree program. And then I layered on top of it almost 28 hours more of coursework in physics and in psychology and in business, accounting and finance, so that I had a well-rounded understanding of how the businesses would operate. And so to give you an idea, if you really want to specialize in a very specific area of engineering, make sure you go to a school that has that, but also they have other options, because you don't want to worm your way into a specific field of engineering and then discover it sucks and then have to change schools. It's easier to change degrees within the same school that you're at. And universities are usually pretty lenient about letting you change those degrees, as long as you stay within the same college, College of Engineering, so to speak. But yeah, the real difference is that the general engineering degree is general. It teaches you how to solve problems and identify where the problems are. And I would say that that's really the core difference, is that it's general. You can take those skills and go into anything in engineering and start to figure it out. You just don't have the depth of study into the narrow field of electrical or aeronautical or civil. Though, hey, there's a lot of dirt movers out there that as my grandmother would call them, the ditch diggers are the civil engineers.
All right, next question.
The next question is, during your university years, were the things that you learned more theoretical or more practical?
Theoretical, not a heartbeat.
Yep.
School is there to teach you the theoretical. Taking it outside of school, your clubs, maybe some of your projects, you're learning how to learn. And that's a big piece of it. So many people think, I can just learn all this stuff without going to school. There's the theory. And what truly makes engineering different from just a technology degree or a bench tech is the theory. Do you understand how it works at the low level? And can you expand upon that? Or can you just apply the basics and not understand what's really happening underneath?
Yeah. So I know I went through physics, so it's undergrad is 100% theory. The first year or two of grad school is all theory, learning the formalism of the different fields of physics. But, once there was labs mixed in, but once you got to grad school, if you're an experimentalist, you are figuring it out. It is hands-on. It's your project. So kind of like Mr. Schneider's, I built a robotic arm. It's like more of like, okay, here's your lab. Go figure out how to get out of school. So there's a point there where you transition a lot of times, or if you're in a hands-on kind of program for that level, but it's got to be rooted in the theory, whether it's EE, mechanical, sciences, biology. You got to learn the history of all the stuff in biology to get to the point of where we're at today, which means you're probably crossing over into chemistry and physics quite a bit. So it becomes a lot of stuff there, and it just takes a while to get through it all.
It's all theory. The only practical that I had was the opportunities to work in the labs and the opportunity to build the robotic arm, which had its number of failures along the way. But I was also blessed. I went to the school that had a good co-op program. And the co-op experience that I had, being out in the actual working world, doing the work that I would be doing. And I got to spend a summer working with a construction company, building a rather large, complex commercial building. And then the second summer, actually doing time and motion study inside a craft production line that made macaroni and cheese and packaged macaroni and cheese. And, that helped ground what I was learning on the theoretical part. So, in school, in the classroom, you're going to learn the theory, and it's going to be extremely helpful if that school does support intern programs, co-op programs. Not a lot of schools back in the 80s did that. There's so many that require it today. And like Rochester Institute of Technology, RIT, you do co-op. Every summer you're doing co-op. It's integral to their program. And so being able to have that mix of being able to take what you learned as theory in the classroom and then go put it into practice in co-op or an internship is priceless.
But on that note, looking for schools in that, asking about their co-op program. Do they have them? What do they do? Where do they co-op with? For Akron, it was part of the program. If you didn't co-op, you found out you're still getting out in 5 years because the whole schedule was put together based off of co-oping. What I got out of my co-op program was priceless. And then we basically hired co-ops. Now where I'm working over at Zeta, we actually have a co-op program over there. I had, Avery's brother actually co-opted with us. I had to see him show up on the list. So I went over and tracked him down. I was checking out what he was doing. It can be an entry into getting a security clearance. So some companies may or may not get you the clearance. If you co-op with the federal government, those government agencies will give you a clearance before they actually have you co-op. You get that, you got a job. You're coming out of college with practical work experience and a security clearance. You can find so many companies that will give you, that'll hire you on the spot, basically. Right?
I'll hire that person right now.
I'm already looking for some. And actually, if I can find one or two right now, I've got hiring recs out for them. Because I need somebody, junior level, couple of years experience, or maybe right out of college, but I need a clearance. In this area, if you're coming back to work in this area, a clearance is a huge deal for a number of these different defense jobs and such. That's the field I'm in, Mr. Muto's in and such, and a number of other folks that, and you do some really, really cool stuff that one day we might actually tell you about.
And our next question is, a lot of you guys mentioned following your passion when it arises. Is there any method to look for where these opportunities lie?
I could start off with this just because I really didn't discover my passion, which turned out to be entrepreneurship, until I actually already got into college. I've really tried forging my own path with a lot of my passions. Like, I'll keep mentioning it again, the Solar Car team and other clubs I run here at Mason. It's all about exploring opportunities. And that's one of the things I love most about college, is that you have hundreds of classes you could take. There are hundreds of student organizations. There are thousands of unique individuals that you could talk to. It's all about exploring and what's on campus. If you sit in your dorm all day and you don't go to class and you don't join any clubs, you're not going to figure out what you love. You need to talk with your professors. You need to learn what they're doing. You need to talk with your colleagues and figure out what they're doing. You need to try a bunch of different student orgs. I went through every single engineering competition here at Mason before I settled on starting my own club. I went through Baja. I went through all the SAE groups we had on campus. And I realized none of them were interesting. I'm like, I don't want to build these cars. I want to build the team that builds the cars. And it took me a year to figure that out. But it was just all about exploring what's on campus.
Getting to know your professors, working with your professors, being able to talk to them and such on campus, whether it be going up to their offices. If you've got problems, talking to professors. I ended up calling my professor from my co-op tour, talking about a new class that he was putting together to find out if it's what I wanted to get involved in and such. And we get to know him. He was a trip. And I'd later fly back coming back to Cleveland and land at the airport. And there was my professor hanging out there. I've been talking to this other guy next to me the whole time back. And we just chatted. We just hit it off pretty well. He goes, "Oh, yeah, I'm meeting my son." And he turns around. "This just over here. This is my son." Oh, we were the plane back together. He was the guy sitting right next to me. but getting to know them, what you learn from them, and seeing them afterwards and so on. They want to see you excel. They want to pass on that knowledge and make those connections for you. I mean, Alex got here because of talking to one of his professors or a TA. And being a TA, even being a teacher's assistant and working with professors.
I'll add just a little bit to that. And it was after I had graduated, and I had the opportunity to, go talk to this vice president of distribution, or go do the job up at, go take the job interview up at Mallory Battery. And I'd run into Dick Smith, who was my advisor at Southwest Missouri State. And I said, yeah, I've got this decision I'm going to have to make. And Dick looked at me with a twinkle in his eye somewhat and said, oh, you already know which job you're going to do. That factory job is going to be boring as hell. You're going to go take this other one that has a lot of question marks about it, because that's going to be the exciting part. He knew me well enough to know that, hey, he had already figured out, based off of what I told him, which direction I would go. So, having those conversations with those instructors, get to know your instructors. I'll share one last tidbit. That guy, Dick Smith, his son is the chief operating officer for a 3PL in Kansas City that I've now done work with twice since then. First time, neither of us realized that his dad was my instructor until he was talking to his dad and said, yeah, I met this guy named Dave Schneider. And he went, oh, wait a second, you need to find out if that's Dave Schneider that went to Southwest. Because if that is, then you're talking to somebody who's really cool. And when Brian came back and told me, yeah, did you go to Southwest? Dick Smith? Yeah. So yeah, my dad says you're really cool. And I was like, holy shit, I haven't seen this guy for 20 years. And, so they remember you.
Mm-hmm.
Get to know those folks, trust them, because they have, if they're good at what they do, and most of them that are in those positions, they are good at what they do, they're going to want to see you succeed, because that's why they're there.
Yeah. I just going back when Alex, I think you guys said some good stuff, but Alex, when you were saying lots of experiences, I think you hit the nail on the head there. It really is. It's hard to say, hey, where's my passion lie? How do I find it? Go out there, experience things, meet people, build your network. A couple of thoughts with that. Passions change through life. There's an overarching one that when we talk about STEM or STEM people, we tend to have a desire to solve problems, to build things, to create things, or whether it's a team or a machine. It's because that's one of the things I'm finding also very rewarding right now is building my team and developing younger engineers. And that really has surprised me in the last few years. But and it doesn't have to, and I also was thinking about, we keep talking about find your passion. I'm thinking about what that would sound like if I was in high school or college and somebody said I had to go find my passion. And I just want to add in, it doesn't have to be perfect all the time. It's not going to be every day that you're doing something that's just the most wonderful thing ever. Sometimes it is about, I need a job and a paycheck, and I can do this job. And you go do it, then you keep yourself open for what's good about that job, what's good about the process that you're working, where's the next opportunity? And you learn about yourself as you go. So I guess if there is a process, it's that. It's keep yourself open to opportunities that interest you and be honest with yourself about what excites you to work on. What do you, when someone starts talking about their project and you're like, man, that sounds really interesting. I got to find something more about that. Go look into it and see if you like it. The other thing is just kind of one thing that I've used to guide me through my career is when I'm looking for the next thing to do, I look around me and find the people I respect that seem to actually enjoy their job. And I use that to guide those decisions to keep that passion going. Because if I'm looking at people that I respect, but they're not having fun, I don't want that job. I don't care what the rewards are because I don't want to show up on a Tuesday then. and it's worked for me. That doesn't work for everybody else. I get that. So yeah, it's a process to find what really fulfills you, and just hold on to the big stuff there of, hey, I like science. I want to find things out. I'm inquisitive. I want to build things. If you got that, then finding the details, maybe, that's a longer process.
All right, so we're gonna start wrapping up soon. So is there anything that you guys wanna leave 612 members with, or is there anything else that you want them to know about, or any pieces of advice that you want to leave them with?
One of the things I kind of heard here just recently is having a mentor, having someone to actually be able to discuss what you want to do, where you want to go. You can use your student counselors for that. Having someone who knows you and that you trust to be open with and so on, to help you guide you through what's your next steps. There's been a number of times when I've had that. It's been fantastic. There's been other times when I didn't, and I would look back and go, yeah, I wish I had. I went and saw my one boss. I was trying to figure out, do I want to leave the government? I retired from 30 plus years with the government, doing defense work and such. I was going to go out in private industry. So I was in my 40s, went and go see him, and I said, he was my boss, but he now left. So I sought him out. So Max, you know me pretty well and such, trying to figure out what I want to do next. Do I really want to leave? Do I want to become a contractor, one of the Beltway bandits, or do I want to stick with the government? He asked me one question. Basically, do you want to be the Govy who's running the program, or do you want to be the contractor taking direction from the Govy who doesn't know what he's doing? And he already knew my answer, because I want to be the guy who knows what the heck's going on and not listen to some idiot who doesn't know how to what he wants to put together and such. And I looked at him without even asking the question. He goes, Dan, you know me too well. In one question, I already knew my answer. He knows me. He was someone I could turn to for advice. Having that sort of person now in high school, as you're figuring things out, is where you're going, when you're in college, and even when you're out, being able to have someone or some group of folks that you can really turn to for advice, for support, that makes the difference.
I'm going to chime in on the importance of those mentors, because I had a mentor, because where I am at now, you could consider be my third career. I pursued a journalism career, and I wasn't happy with it. I was pretty miserable with it. And the managing editor of the newspaper that I worked at said, you don't really seem to be having a good time. You're not happy. And I said, I'm not. And his response was, well, let's talk about that. But, and the conversation that came out of it, even though it was a difficult conversation, it was one that it wasn't that I was bad at what I was doing. It was that I didn't like it anymore. And to have the courage to be able to listen to this outside advice, tell me, this person, tell me, you're really good at what you do, but if you're miserable doing it, then stop doing it. Go do something else. And every day that I sit at my desk or I go, I'm not having fun, then I remember back that conversation. And I'm nowhere near as miserable at any point in what I do today as I was then. And so having that courage to listen to that advice, and then having the courage to go, I've worked in this, I thought this was my passion, but it didn't turn out the way that I wanted it to. And having the courage to go change, go back to school, change, not know what I was going to do. That was the other part. But you got to have the mentors, you got to listen to them. And it's, they won't be, it's going to be what you need as that second set of eyes, somebody else who's been down the road and can recognize what you're facing when you can't see it. That's important, and generate those kinds of relationships.
So I don't know if everyone went yet. Sorry, my internet just dropped. The final thing I want to add is specifically to those of you who are like rising seniors and are thinking about applying to colleges right now, feel free to reach out to me. I went through the entire college application process only 4 years ago. It is a very stressful part of your life. There are a lot of questions. So if you have any questions, whether it's about SATs or ACTs or letters of recommendation or college essays or how to apply or anything, feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to either chat over Slack or Zoom and just tell you what my experiences were and what I had learned throughout the entire process.
And let me piggyback on that too, that we're here to also write letters of recommendation. I think I know Mr. Schneider and I both have been asked in the past, and we love doing it. You guys are really important to us, and it's a pleasure to write a letter of recommendation.
All right, and with that, we've come to the end of our panel event. So thank you to all of our amazing mentors for volunteering their time. And once again, thank you, mentors, for all that you do for our team, for all the time that you take out of the year to help us in the shop, help us outside of the shop, just help our team succeed. So thank you for everything, and thank you for everything that you do during the season. It's truly amazing, and 612 loves you guys.
Aiden, to Jade, this was awesome. I hope you guys had as much fun with it as we did. Thanks for bringing this idea together and bringing it to fruition. Awesome, awesome day.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, no, enjoyed it. And I just wanted to say, if there's other questions that come up, I'm sure, just reach out to either, any of us or the team that put it together. I'm sure we can figure out a way to get more questions answered.
Yeah. So thank you for all the audience for joining. We hope you learned something. And I hope you're a little bit more excited about the upcoming FRC season. Once again, thank you to leadership, and thank you to all the mentors for making this thing happen. So yeah, see y'all soon.
All right.